Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please join us in the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we'll be studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 18, the description of Varṇāśrama dharma. Hare Krishna. Please join us for Jiva prayers. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please join us for Mangalacharna prayers together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiriyet Shratam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Hridayantasto He Bhadrani Vidunoti Suhasatam Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhakti Naishtiki. Hare Krishna. So today we will be studying Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th Canto, chapter 18, the description of Varṇāśrama dharma. Please join us in the recitation of the first verse. Shri Bhagwan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Vanam Vivikshu Putreshu.
Vanam Vivikshu Putreshu.
Bharyam Nyasya Sahevava.
Bharyam Nyasya Sahevava.
Vana Eva Visej Chantas.
Vana Eva Vache Chanstra.
Tritiyam Bhagam Ayushaha.
Tritiyam Bhagam Ayusha.
Please.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagwan Uvacha.
Vanam Vivikshu Putreshu.
Vanam Vivikshu Putreshu.
Bharyam Nyasya Sahevava.
Bharyam Nyasya Sahevava.
Vana Eva Vache Chantas.
Vana Eva Vasich Chantas.
Tritiyam Bhagam Ayusha.
Tritiyam Bhagam Ayushaha. Translation by the disciples of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one who desires to adopt the third order of life, Vanaprastha, should enter the forest with a peaceful mind, leaving his wife with his mature sons or else taking her along with him. Purport: in Kali Yuga, a human being generally cannot live more than 100 years. And even this is becoming most unusual. A man who has a reasonable expectation of living for 100 years may adopt the Vanaprastha order at the age of 50. And then at the age of 75, he may take sannyas for complete renunciation. Since in Kali Yuga, very few people live for 100 years, one should adjust the schedule accordingly. Vanaprastha is intended as a gradual transition from materialistic family life to the stage of complete renunciation. Hare Krishna. So, today we are studying and continue to study UDDHAVA Gita. So again, from chapter 6 onward till 29th chapter in this 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we are studying UDDHAVA Gita. And also we will learn how to have firm devotion for the Supreme Lord, Lord Shri Krishna, amidst all miseries of distractions or distractions in life. So there are so many, once again, the nature of this material world is dukkhalayam and shashvatam, so we will be looking from that perspective. So please join us in invoking, in seeking blessings from the Acharyas and invoking auspiciousness. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshitarine Om Ajnana Timrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripa tadaham vande Shri Gurum Dina Taranam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. So, as is given in this very first verse, we have been given a choice. So again, first of all, we have been given this human birth, which is again a mercy of the Lord. And now, as part of the human birth, to attain the purpose, we have been given the choice to choose which part do we want to choose. So again, we refer to this in Ashtanga Yoga. For Ashtanga Yoga, this is the path. While one can simply, excel an Ashtanga Yoga by taking to devotional service. And Varṇāśrama dharma that's been described in the 17th and 18th chapter of 11th Canto are not any easier than performing Ashtanga Yoga. And they have been discussed extensively in the 17th and 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita as well, as how one engages in what are the kind of activities? Sacrifice, austerity and charity. One should not give up because it even purifies the pure souls, Lord Krishna says. And then in chapter 17, it was discussed in the mode of goodness. These are performed as a matter of duty as per the injunctions of Shastra. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17. And then, sacrifice, austerity and charity are performed for sense gratification in the mode of passion. And ignoring the Shastras, all the scriptures when these are performed, giving, with either in the wrong mood, with a mood of, in anger or even with remorse when these are performed, or sometimes even with laziness and just thinking all in all, when they are performed without the injunctions of Shastras and given at the wrong time, place and circumstances, not meeting the required time, place and circumstances, that is in the mode of ignorance. Then in chapter 18, Lord Krishna continues to describe as how the activities are being influenced by the three modes of material nature, how knowledge is in three modes of material nature, right? When knowledge is based in the directions given by the Shastras, right, of what is the object of knowledge and how one should be engaging in various kind of activities. That is in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So Srila Prabhupada describes it so nicely in the purpose. He makes it so crystal clear for us that when it's at the mode of duty, when we perform in the mode of goodness, that's when we really come to know, like, okay, what is the injunction of the Shastra, and we follow them. And the mode of passion, how does one engage in? That we person seeking sense gratification. So when we are conditioned with this body and thinking that I am this body and everything that belongs to me is mine, so being in that influence of false ego, a person engages in all kind of endeavors, activities for sense gratification. So knowledge is also, like today in the colleges and universities, the knowledge we get is more in the mode of passion, because it is to how to become rich, how do you become successful, and how do you live a very successful life. And then dropouts can be considered as in the mode of ignorance. They are not even taking to that particular knowledge. They are ignoring everything and thinking whatever they are doing is all in all. That's the purpose of life, to be in the state of eat, sleep and be merry. So that's their slogan, in the mode of ignorance. So as we understand and continue to move forward and understanding the Varṇāśrama dharma, Lord Krishna is identifying that this is also under the three modes of material nature. Guna means also ropes. So a human being under the three modes of material nature is as if acting like a puppet bound by the ropes, and the three modes of material nature, they are in constant competition with each other. And based on the influence, the activity of a human being are commanded, as if one is as if forced to perform those activities because of the influence of three modes of material nature. So when you look from this perspective, the body is under the three modes of material nature, but the soul is conditioned. So that is why it's called false ego, like false the consciousness of the soul. So again, that ego is covered because of the conditioning of the body. And even though a living entity is an eternal servant of Lord Shri Krishna, Jivera Saruphoya Krishna Nityadas, the living entity being conditioned, acts under the modes of material nature. And even happiness is in the three modes of material nature. Happiness that in the beginning looks like poison, but at the end is like nectar. is in the mode of goodness. Happiness that in the beginning looks like nectar, but at the end is like poison. That is in the mode of passion. And Srila Prabhupada gave a very nice example in Bhagavad Gita. Just like a boy and a girl meet and they are seeking sense gratification, they want to enjoy each other. So if that is the mindset, then in the beginning, it seems like very nice. But at the end, it leads to so many distress. And, if they are separated and divorced and so forth, there is so much lamentation and it's like poisonous. Life appears like filled with poison. And so that is in the mode of passion. And mode of ignorance is when one thinks religion to be religion and irreligion to be religion. Then that happiness is in the mode of ignorance. Now even above these three modes of material nature is Vishuddha Sattva, right? Which is the transcendental stage. So instead of doing it as a duty, when a devotee realizes that the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is all in all, Vasudeva Sarvamati Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha, then one rises above the three modes of material nature. Srila Prabhupada gave a very nice example. He's saying that when one wants to come to the position of a devotional service, to be a devotee, one has to at least make an effort to rise to the mode of goodness. Because in mode of goodness, one is clean and can perform the austerity of mind, body and speech. Now, Arjuna in the 7th chapter had asked this question, that what happens that a devotee engaging in your devotional service, my dear Lord Krishna, is if he meets death early on. Then Lord Krishna says that if a practitioner, a devotee, a bhakta, loses his life in an early stage, it is not good that he is going to be like a riven cloud. If he is not mature and he faces death, at that time he would go to higher planetary systems and enjoy many years in that life, and then will again come back to this earthly planet and take birth in an aristocratic family, a very rich family, so that he would have an opportunity. Now there is a subtle thing that's hidden in here in his response, that one is guaranteed to take to devotional service, is guaranteed to get human birth, and human birth is rare. So we understand this aspect. Second is, Lord Krishna says, but if one who is an advanced devotee, and then his life finishes, being at that advanced stage, he doesn't waste his time by going to higher planetary systems and taking births and all those factors. Rather, he immediately takes birth in the family of a transcendentalist and is able to quickly reach to the previous stage where he was and continue to progress further. Now this is very assuring. Yet at the same time, devotees sometimes also have this inquiry, because some devotees, again, as we are as practitioners practicing devotional service, there is always this anxiety. What happens, right, if we are continuing to endeavor in our service, in our devotional service, and we are continuing to chant the holy name and so forth, how is it assured that Lord would take care of us? Sometimes this doubt arises. Even Mother Teresa, in her diary, she wrote that she had some doubts about the presence of God and about her duties. And when journalists, they hear these things, they immediately blow things out of proportion. They even declared that she is not a saint because she has doubts about her own position. Well, this reminds me that devotees always take this subtle humble position. Very nice example is given is Narottam Das Thakur, when he is singing, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Karo More, Tum Bina Ke Dayalu Jagat Samsare, Patita Pavana Hetu Tava Avataro, Mosama Patita Prabhu Napai Bearo. He's identifying that, my dear Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you appeared in this Kali age as a golden avatar to deliver the fallen souls. And you would not find anyone more fallen than me. Look at the humble position. And he is one of the Manjaris, also understanding the spiritual world. He is coming directly from Goloka. And he is taking that humble position. Another incident that we are reminded is Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, when he was engaged in devotional service, and in our parampara, in Brahma Sampradaya parampara, there is more it is more maintained by instructing spiritual masters like Shiksha Gurus than Diksha Gurus. Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj never had initiation ceremony done, and he never received like an initiation, a formal initiation by Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. He was just as a disciple, he was taking instructions from Bhakti Vinod Thakur. So when Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada, when he approached his father, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he was an erudite scholar. And his father, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, knew that my son is an erudite scholar, he is a great devotee, he has great potential. But how can I make it humble? So instead of giving him initiation, he says, you should go and take initiation from my disciple, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur's instruction, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he took it to his heart. He went and took initiation from Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. Yet, such an exalted personality, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, he made a simple declaration that, when I die, you should drag my body all around in Navdvip, showing people that this is what a non-devotee looks like. And some of the Brahmanas, there's some of the Brahmanas, they were really thinking that, this is what they should do. So when Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, he left his body. At that time, they were actually thinking of dragging his body. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he intervened, identifying that his spiritual master, Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, was putting himself in this humble position. Otherwise, he is a great personality, a pure devotee of Lord Shri Krishna. So this is the mood of a devotee, always thinking that, what is my position? Taradapi sunichena tarurapi sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. So thinking oneself more humble than the grass on the street. Taradapi sunichena. And tarurapi sahishnuna, tarur means tree. More tolerant, sahishnuna, than the tree. A tree never complains when you cut it off, while it continues to give all its life. It gives us shade, it gives us fruits, it gives us leaves, it gives us bark for medicinal purposes. It even gives its wood after it is cut off. Vraksha, that's another name for a tree in Sanskrit. Vraksha means that is meant to be cut off. It knows its destination, but does not stop giving. So being more tolerant than the tree. Amanina, and not expecting any respect from others. Manadina, always be ready to give respect to others. Kirtaniya sadhari, in this humble state and with tolerant state and not expecting any respect but ready to give all respects to others, one can continue to chant the glories of Lord Shri Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Yet, Lord Krishna, he gives so many wonderful examples. We will be coming down to this particular chapter, but I want to really get to the essence first, the blessing in this chapter. So let's cover the blessing, and then we'll cover how Lord Krishna is so merciful as an affectionate father. As Bhav Gahi Janadana he is, he understands the essence in our heart. He wants to really taste the sweet love in our heart for him. So Lord Krishna says in this chapter as a blessing that, my dear Uddhav, I am the Supreme Lord of all worlds. So Sarvalok Maheshwaram. So we understand from the peace formula that he is the supreme proprietor of all material and spiritual universes. And I create and destroy this universe. And this is in the very first verse of the first canto of the first chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Janmadiyasya yato anvayad. So he is the one who creates, maintains and destroys this material universe. The primary creation as well as maintenance in the secondary creation, where Brahma helps in secondary creation for creation activity, and Rudra, Lord Shiva, helps in annihilation of the secondary creation. So, being its ultimate cause, Sarva Karana Karanam. So Lord Krishna is the supreme cause. I am thus the absolute truth, and one who worships me with unfailing devotion service comes to me. So he is directly telling that one who worships me, understanding in this manner that I am the cause of all causes, I am the supreme proprietor, and I am the absolute truth. Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yaj jnanam avyayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagwan iti shabdate. The transcendentalists who know the absolute truth realize the absolute truth in three forms. Brahmeti, Brahman effulgence, which is all, the Sat feature, eternal. Paramatmeti, the super soul, Shirodaksha Vishnu, expanding in this material universe as super soul, entering even in the atoms, even the void between the atoms, the space between the atoms, and in the heart of all living entities, and represents Sat Chit, eternity and full of knowledge feature, and Bhagwan, the Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself, who represents Satchidananda, all three aspects. Sat is eternal, Chit is full of knowledge, and Anand is full of transcendental bliss. Ishvaraha Paramaha Krishnaha Satchidananda Vigraha Anadira Adira Govindaha Sarva Karana Karanam. In the invocation prayers of Brahma Samhita, Lord Brahma is praying that Lord Shri Krishna, you are, embodiment of Satchidanand, these three, eternity, knowledge and bliss features, aspects. These are qualities. And you are the cause of all causes. And he is also referred to as Govind, the one who gives pleasure to the senses and pleasure to the cows. And then Lord Krishna, he continues to explain that thus one who has purified his existence by execution of his prescribed duties. So, Swadharma, that's prescribed duties, and that's based on our body. So the human form of body is under the influence of the three modes of material nature, and we have been given the prescribed duties, as we had been hearing from chapter 17 of this Canto 11, as how we are in the four social orders, as well as we are in the four spiritual orders. So again, or occupational orders. So occupational duty and prescribed duties seem to appear same from the occupational divisions, and from social divisions, the other aspects of our prescribed duty, as brahmacharya, grahastha, vanaprastha and sannyas ashram explain, they are evident. And who fully understands my supreme position and who is endowed with scriptural and realized knowledge, very soon achieve me. So again, Lord Krishna is telling that one who understands who he is, right? He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, quickly achieves him. So, in Bhagavad Gita, there is a corresponding verse. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanya chashmi tattvataha tato mam tattvato gyatva vishte tad anantaram. So, Bhaktya mam abhijanati. Who can really know Krishna? His bhakta, his devotee knows Krishna. Tattvataha, in truth. So that is an essence. And so, the followers of Varṇāśrama system, they accept religious principles. And sometimes we call these religious principles to be rigorous principles also, because they are very rigorous. Just like we saw Ashtanga Yogi is trying to get various kinds of mystic perfections. If we study Varṇāśrama dharma, right? And Srila Prabhupada, how does he explain this Varṇāśrama dharma? That's like taking steps to reach to the 50th floor in a building. And how is Bhakti Yoga or devotional service explained? Just by taking an elevator, you just get into the elevator, press the button, and you wait, and you are on to the 50th floor, and you get out of the elevator, you have reached the top floor. But imagine how strenuous it is if you had to take stairs, and on the stairs there will be various kind of allurements. Material energy puts various kind of allurements all at every step as we are advancing through Varṇāśrama dharma. Yet at the same time, Srila Prabhupada said that not everyone will take to devotional service. They would like to follow Varṇāśrama dharma. So here we will, for those people who are attracted towards Varṇāśrama dharma, we will cover some aspect. But before we cover that, understand one very important aspect. That a devotee does not have anything to lose. In the second canto, the contents of Bhagavad Gita summarized, Lord Krishna says, Neha bhikram nashasti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpam asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. A small endeavor in devotional service is not lost. Rather, it protects one from the greatest danger. Trayate mahato bhayat. So it saves one from the greatest danger in one's life. And another place in the 9th chapter, 22nd verse, Ananyaschintiyanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. So when Ajju Acharya, he was translating Bhagavad Gita, he is one of the Acharyas in our parampara, sampradaya, he looked at this verse, and in this verse, Ananyaschintiyanto mam, right, who are engaged in pure devotion, unallied devotion service towards me, Lord Krishna is saying, Ye jana paryupasate, these devotees who are constantly worshipping me. Tesham nitya bhiyuktanam. So in a regulated manner, on a regular basis, they are, engaged in this manner. Yogakshemam vahamyam. So they are performing this yoga, bhakti yoga, and I deliver what they lack and I preserve what they have. So when Arjuna Acharya saw, he actually crossed out that, he delivers himself, maybe he will send his agents. So as he was translating. So he crossed off, aham, vajamyaham. So when he crossed with 2 strikes from his kalam, from his pen, in Vedic times they had different kind of lipi methods, not today's ball pens and all. And then he said to his wife that I am going to take bath in the river and I will come back and continue to work. So at that time his wife, she was cooking meal for the deities. So after he left, there was a knock on the door. So his wife came to the door, wondering who is it? How come he has returned so quickly? He just went out. So when she opens the door, what does she see? She sees 2 young boys, one fair-skinned, one dark-skinned. And these 2 boys were carrying big loads on their shoulders. And she says, who are you? And what is the purpose of your coming? They say, oh, please, you should take these things that Arjuna Acharya asked us to bring, and please, just take this. And she was like, you appear scared. What is wrong? And then they said, oh, actually he is very strict, and see how he hit me on my back. So the one who was dark complexion, he shows his back, and there were 2 very strong marks as if piercing through the skin and flesh. They were like marks across the skin, across the back of the body. And she was shocked. She never knew that her husband could be so cruel. She's like, no, my husband is not like this. They're like, no, see, this is what he did. He's going to punish us if he, if he's not satisfied and so forth. And then she's like surprised. She's in a state of shock. What is going on? My husband, how could he be so cruel? So beautiful young boys, and how could he hit them so in such a manner? And at that time, she was in that state of shock. She brings the stuff in, and when Arjuna Acharya comes home after taking bath from the river, what does he see? That his wife is sitting, and without having offered the bhoga to her deities, she is eating the food stuff that has been prepared. And he's like, Devi, what is going on? And she's like, how could you do that? He's like, what did I do? She's like, there were 2 young boys, they were here. A fair complexion, so beautiful, moon-like boys, their lotus-like eyes. And I saw 2 big marks piercing through the back of the dark boy. And she draws it, and immediately sees that that's exactly the way he had drawn the 2 lines against Vajamyaham. And so now he realizes that Lord Krishna himself preserves what a devotee has, and he himself personally delivers what a devotee lacks. And is moved by this incident. And he in his commentary continues to make the proper corrections and following the injunctions given in the Shastra. So it is very important for us to understand that Lord is so merciful, that he is constantly making effort. Yet at the same time, so our journey can be as easy as taking an elevator. But sometimes people who are bewildered, they take the elevator approach. But it's very important to understand what that elevator approach is. And once you understand what this elevator approach is, I don't think we would like to go with the Varṇāśrams, like following that long process. Rather, we want to take the elevator ASAP, right? So, we talked about that there are 4 varnas. Brahmacharya, right? Brahmacharis are there. Oh, the 4 ashramas. Brahmacharya, Grahastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyas. Now what are the responsibilities in each of these varnas? So in the Brahmacharya, one is mainly engaged in serving the spiritual master and submissively inquiring, and that is the process. So in Bhakti Yoga, that process is there. Lord Krishna says, Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya ubdekshyanti tajjnanam jnaninas tattva darshinaha. Tad vidhi, as per the process, pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. So one has to render service, loving devotional service to the spiritual master, and prashnena sevaya. So again, also inquiring submissively from the spiritual master. Ubdekshyanti tajjnanam jnaninas tattva darshinaha. And the spiritual master can give us the instruction because they have seen the truth, so that we can be on our way back home to achieve that love of God at the goal of life, the goal that we are all seeking to be able to go back home, back to Godhead. That's the secondary effect, but love of Godhead is the primary effect. So while everything that was talking, Lord Krishna was identifying as part of duty in Bhagavad Gita in the 17th and 18th chapter, if you replace that duty with love and gratitude and devotion and humility, just by having that mode, the right mode, to spontaneously be engaged in loving devotional service, in serving for the pleasure of Shri Shri Radha Krishna, then we can attain perfection in this very life. And so here, one can take to devotional service no matter which ashram they are in. So you don't have to go back to Brahmacharya ashram and start becoming a Brahmachari. No. If you are a Grahastha, start now. Because Arjuna at that time was already a Grahastha. And he was a warrior on top of that, right? So his Varna was that of a Kshatriya, his ashram was that of a Grahastha, and he took to devotional service and perfected his life. So we can all take to devotional service no matter which stage we are in. But in Varṇāśrama dharma, if one is following Varṇāśrama dharma, then one has to live a Brahmacharya life, which is very, auspicious, austerity filled, and there's a lot of sacrifices and austerities and penances engaged in this. And then when one decides that, okay, when grows up and cannot take to Vanaprastha and Sannyas, then one can take to Grahasthashram. So there's an optional ashram, right? And most of the people in current age, they take to Grahasthashram because they want to, enjoy dharma, artha, kama, moksha, those 4 aspects of life, which is also given in the Shastras, and being attracted by the flowery language and based on the tradition in this material world, one gets, in this direction. So ever since we were children, we were told that we have to get good job, we have to have a nice wife or husband, again based on if you're a boy or a girl respectively, and lead a very nice life, following the scriptures, following the rituals given in the Vedas, and be successful in our life. So now, as a Grahastha ashram, what is one's duty? One has to seek protection of all living entities and perform sacrifices. So again, comes back to this particular mode of goodness, just like one has to, as thinking as one's duty, one has to make sure that all living entities, not just their family members, but all living entities are given protection, they are given shelter. That is the responsibility of a householder. So when Srila Prabhupada, he married some of his disciples. So one couple, they were going on the very next day with Prabhupada on a morning walk. And so the husband wanted to get some instruction from Srila Prabhupada about marriage life, right? So he asked Srila Prabhupada, so what is the duty of a Grahastha, Srila Prabhupada? Srila Prabhupada said that after you prepare bhoga and offer it to the deities, before eating those remnants, the prasad yourself, you should open the door and call out 3 times. Is there anyone hungry? We have prasadam for you. Is there anyone hungry? We have prasadam for you. Please come. If there is anyone hungry out there, we have prasadam for you. Please come. And if, after he has served those who have come hungry, in that particular vicinity, then only he should honor prasadam. So he was thinking, wanted to hear, this disciple wanted to hear some more scripture, like how husband wife would be treating each other and so forth. He had a different mindset. So he was quiet, and then they continued to have other conversation. And then while coming back, he poses the same question, thinking that this time maybe Srila Prabhupada would understand. And Srila Prabhupada understood very well. And he said that so the question is, what is the duty of a grihastha, right? Husband and wife, after they are married, a husband and wife, how should they be carrying out their life? And the message Srila Prabhupada reveals again is that a grihastha, after offering the bhoga to the deities, before accepting the remnants of food, the prasad, himself or herself, should open the door of the house and call out 3 times, is there anyone hungry in this area? We have food, for you to eat. So the message is very clear. He is clearly identifying that the important aspect of a grihastha is to make sure that every living entity in the vicinity where they are living they have a shelter. So the protection is one important aspect. And second one is to be able to perform sacrifices. And the topmost sacrifice, the prescribed sacrifice of this age is Sankirtan Yagya. Right? Krite tadadhayate vishrum tiritayam yajatom kehe dwapare paricharyayam kalau tadharikirtana krita yug satyug dhyayate vishrum. People who are austere, so they could meditate on Lord Krishna and attain perfection. Tretayam yajatom kehe, in the Treta Yuga. So in the Krita Yuga we already talked about, there were no Varṇāśrama, right? The 4 divisions of society and of the ashrams, that was not there. Because everyone was a Hamsa, right? Everyone was highly elevated. Simultaneously, they were automatically devotees of the Lord. Right. So when we talked about like Srila Prabhupada, he performed marriage of his disciples, right? 2 of his disciples, boy and a girl. So they were the ones asking about the marriage life. And so the married couple who are his disciples, they wanted to get further instructions, how to be successful, happy married couple in Grihastha ashram. So here, we are talking about Varṇāśrama. So in the Krita Yuga, Satyuga, everyone was Hamsa, automatically a devotee of Lord, and they attained perfection by meditating on Lord Shri Krishna. So that was the sacrifice for Satyuga. Treta Yuga, again, because the austerity aspect had gone away, one of the leg of dharma was broken, there was still cleanliness, mercy and truthfulness there. So they could perform fire sacrifices, the 3 forms of fire sacrifices they manifested, and the Varṇāśrama dharma became they came in existence. In Krita Yuga, Vedas, they came into existence. Then in Dwapar Yuga, one can go on pilgrimage and directly serve Lord Shri Krishna, because he appeared in Dwapar Yuga on earthly planet. So by doing this, one can attain perfection. Kalau tad Hari Kirtana. In Kali age, one can perform Hari Kirtan, congregational chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So a grihastha can engage in performing sacrifices in this age by performing Sankirtan Yagya. So that's why many grihasthas, they hold namhattas at their homes, they engage in congregational chanting, and even sometimes sitting with the family members. Even in COVID-19 times, we all just sit with the family members and do a chanting in the morning, and then in the evening we sing glories of the Lord. We sing together, worship the Lordship. One person is acting as a pujari, another one is singing, another one is playing mridanga, another one is playing harmonium, someone is playing kartal, and everyone is engaged in congregational chanting of the holy name. So that is what has been identified, is the sweet mood of loving devotional service. And in Varṇāśrama dharma, it is said that at least as a duty, if somebody performs, then it is mode of goodness. What to talk about if somebody performs with love and devotion, that it transcends the 3 modes of material nature and becomes transcendental by its very nature, right? That's why Lord Krishna says, Bhaktya mamavi janati yaman ya chashmi tattvataha. So he is saying, a devotee knows me in truth, because Lord Krishna is, as an affectionate father, his bhav kari janada. He understands the essence in our heart, the very mood, and with love this loving exchange is possible, not just with the family members, not just with the devotees, but directly with Lord Shri Krishna, Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Radha Shyam Sundar, Shri Radha Govind Ji. So here, in Varṇāśrama dharma, now what is the duty of a Vanaprasthi? So one who has taken to Vanaprastha life. Vana is forest. Prastha means one who has departed to forest. And in the first translation itself, we heard of the first verse that one should give up his family life and go to the forest in the third stage of one's life. And that is like after 50 years. Well, if you're following Vanaprastha, you can already understand how difficult that is. And one, as a devotee of Lord Shri Krishna, doesn't have to do that, as literally being stated, but one has to be in that mindset, understanding that what he's saying is don't be attached to the material things. What is that material things? One is thinking that everything that is there in this world is separate for sense enjoyment, and Lord is separate. But when a devotee builds this true vision, coming from the Shastras, is that everything is an expansion of Lord Krishna's energy, his potencies, his unlimited potencies. Then one sees everything in relationship with Krishna. And so one is able to understand how things are. Anasaktasya vishayam yatharam upayunjata nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yukta vairagyam uchyate. So when one understands that everything is in relationship with Krishna, and should be engaged in serving Lord Shri Krishna for his pleasure, that is proper renunciation. Yukta vairagya. Yukta means proper. Vairagya. Vairagya is renunciation. Uchyate. Such renunciation is called yukta vairagya. While one who is thinking that, these things are for my enjoyment and that thing is for Lord's purpose, and I want to seek things for my sense gratification, that is Falgu Vairagya. And when one doesn't even know how to use various things, that's also Falgu Vairagya. So in Varṇāśrama dharma, there is an important aspect, and there are 3 examples we'll discuss quickly. So first example is that of Kardama Muni. Kardama Muni and Devahuti, right? They were married couples, and Devahuti was serving her husband Kardama Muni. And when Kapil Dev was born, at that time Kardama Muni, when Kapil Dev grew up to be a young man, at that time, even though Kapil Dev is a perfect entity, his expansion of Lord Shri Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's at his home. Yet at the same time, Kardama Muni is following Varṇāśrama dharma. He goes to the forest, leaving his wife under the care of his grown-up son. So that is when one follows Varṇāśrama dharma, one has to leave his wife under the protection of grown-up sons, and then one has to depart to the forest life, which is to give up all material association and live in an austere state to understand that everything is an expansion of Lord Shri Krishna. Now second example is Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra, he did not have any living son, right? After the battle at Kurukshetra, all the Kauravas, they were killed at the battle. So what happened in this case, a husband takes his wife with him. So he took Gandhari after Mahatma Vidur. He imparted spiritual knowledge to Dhritarashtra and made him understand that you should not be living at the, arms, like taking arms from Yudhishthira, the one who actually, with your sons, you try to banish from this kingdom. Rather, you should take to spiritual advancement and reawaken and remove the darkness which was blinding to Dhritarashtra. So Dhritarashtra, he took his wife Gandhari along with Kunti, and they went to the forest. And Dhritarashtra at that time, after some time in Vanaprastha state, he invoked yogic fire from his body, and in the very hut everything caught fire, and Gandhari entered that fire and attained perfection by following her husband. She was a very chaste wife. And so this is how he ended his life. So he didn't even go to the level of sannyas. He immediately at Vanaprastha state went back home, back to Godhead, which is also another lesson. One doesn't have to go through all 4 stages to go back home, back to Godhead. And he became a devotee at that particular time, as the scriptures explain. Now, what happens to the sannyas ashram? So in the sannyas ashram, the main religious duty is equanimity, self-control and non-violence. And with mind, body and words. So there are three ways we can perform actions: mind, body and words. So these three forms, when one performs action, those actions should be devotional service, should be engaged. All actions should be to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we know this as Prahlad Maharaj revealed: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Pad Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atma Nivedanam. And further in the 11th canto we realize then reading and writing of scriptures is also added on because of the effect of Kali age. Because in Kali age, Prana Alpayusha Sabhya Kalavasmin Yugejana Manda Sumanda Matyo Manda Bhagya Praduta. Man, this Kali age, they are short-lived, they have short lives, right? Prana Alpayu. Alpayu means their life is not very long. And that's what we read, that maximum is like not average. It is very difficult. We find someone living to 100 years of age. People generally reach late 70s, early 80s, and then they leave this material world. They leave this body. And so, Kalavasmin Yukejana, and they are quarrelsome by nature. So the living entity is born in this Kali age, the human beings born in this Kali age. They are quarrelsome by nature. Manda is lazy. Men are lazy by nature when in this Kali age we see. Sumanda Matyo. The intelligence is very less. Sumanda is very little intelligence, Matyo. The intelligence is very little. So it's easy to forget things, easy to get bewildered and confuse ourselves. Manda Bhagya. And on top of that they are unlucky. Right? So they are so unlucky that the easiest process is in front of them, but at the same time they are engaged in all kind of fruitive activities, creating further cycle of birth and death, leading to Janmritu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam. Constantly entangling themselves in this web of this material world, leading to a life, future lives of birth, death, old age and disease, constantly suffering in this material world, again and again. And as they continue to proceed, Manda Bhagya Upraduta, and not just unlucky, and they're constantly disturbed. So the anxiety is always there. Why is the anxiety? Anxiety has two reasons. We have anxiety either about our past because we are lamenting, this should have happened, so I would have been happy. Or the one who is living in the future, right, aspiring for the future. So the anxiety relates to things which are in the past or in the future. They forget to live in the present moment. While a devotee constantly engages in devotional service and utilizes every single moment in the very present moment. Brahma bhuta prasannatma na shochidaya kakshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate param. Brahma bhuta prasannatma. A devotee who is Brahma bhuta, is attained the level of Brahman. He is prasannatma, he is always rejoicing transcendentally. And earlier we heard that a devotee, the kind of transcendental happiness he experiences, a materialist can never experience. Na shochati na kankshati. And such a devotee does not lament about the past because the past is gone and future is a dream, right? Na kankshati, does not aspire for the future. Sama sarveshu bhuteshu, and he is equally disposed towards all living entities. Mad bhakti labhate param, and constantly engage in the loving devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, Lord Govinda. So in this manner, a devotee continues to make his life full of bliss. But in Varṇāśrama dharma, as we'll hear, that in a vanaprastha state, one has to perform, as we are talking about, 50 years onward, one who goes to the forest, then they have to perform Agnihotra Darsha and Purnamasa sacrifices, as one had been performing in Grihastha ashram also. And also he has to perform various vows and sacrifices of Chaturmasya, since all the rituals are related with the Vanaprastha ashram system, as per the expert knowers of the Vedas. So again, such people are bewildered by the flowery language of the Vedas, so they follow this. And what happens? If a vanaprastha for some reason, understanding that even promotion to Brahmaloka is a miserable situation, right? Tasyeva heto prayateta kovido na labhyate brahmatam uparada Tallabhyate dukhvadanyatah sukham kalena sarvata gabira ramhasha tasya vahito prayateta kovido na labhyate brahmatam uparyata. So again, one should not engage in any endeavor to obtain something that can be obtained in this material world, from the topmost planet of Brahma Lok to the bottommost to the Patal Lok. Rather, one should engage in devotional service of the Lordship. So that is the essence of this shloka. So what Vanaprastha, when he comes to this understanding that there is nothing in this material world that is auspicious, everything is inauspicious. Thus, one has to engage in loving devotional service of Lord Shri Krishna. Then he is able to detach himself completely from this material world and from fruitive activities related to the results of the fruitive activities. So such activities, they stop. So how do you stop any activity that results, give up any fruits coming from fruitive activities? Simply by taking to devotional service. Otherwise, any kind of activity that you do would be, being influenced by the three modes of material nature, will lead to such situation. So there are three types of karmas that have been identified in Bhagavad Gita: karma, vikarma, and akarma. Karma, the pious activities as per the injunctions of the Shastras, scriptures, bona fide scriptures. That pious work, activity when one performs, he has pious reactions. So again, one has to take birth to be able to enjoy, if he is not able to enjoy in the very lifetime when he performed the pious activity. Impious activity is sinful actions, vikarma. And so one has to face the sinful reactions. But if one is not able to face those sinful reactions in a lifetime, so one again has to take birth, because the karma cycle has to finish. And then the third is akarma, devotional service, which doesn't have any reaction, because everything is done in service to please Lord Hrishikesha, Lord Krishna, the master of the senses. And Lord Krishna gives this instruction to Arjuna: Yat karoshi yad ashnasi yad juhoshi tadasi yad tapasyasi kanteya tat kurushvam adarpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you give, whatever you offer, whatever you activities you perform, do them as an offering to me, O dear Arjuna. So we can understand from that perspective that when we engage in devotional service, there is no reaction. Rather, there is constant bliss in this life and the next. So the devotee, when it comes to this particular level, then he may take the sannyas order of life. So at that time, one becomes qualified to take sannyas order of life. But if a devotee is lovingly, not just as a dutiful, but lovingly performing devotional service, then he is already an ascetic. Srila Prabhupada says that even a grahastha, a householder, constantly engaging in devotional service, following the regulative principles, following those four regulative principles, which is no meat eating, including no eggs, fish, onion, garlic, no intoxication, including no caffeine, tea, coffee, sodas, caffeinated sodas, no gambling, and no illicit sex. So sex is allowed in marriage life and also for the progeny of children. So one is following these four regulative principles and constantly chanting minimum 16 rounds of japa every day. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Then one has protection. So Srila Prabhupada, he kept the principles as is in the parampara. He changed the details. And by changing the detail, he said that you have to chant minimum 16 rounds, otherwise I cannot provide you protection. So he, as an affectionate father, is providing us protection when we chant minimum 16 rounds. So that's the minimum. On auspicious days like Janmashtami, Ekadashi and Madhav Tithis, other auspicious occasions, we should chant minimum 25 rounds on that day. So now what is the stage of a sannyasi? So now when one takes to sannyas, demigods, they get disturbed. They are also devotees of Lord Shri Krishna, but they get disturbed. They say, this man is taking sannyas and is going to surpass us and go back home, back to Godhead, because they are in the heavenly planets. And one would go beyond heavenly planets, beyond Brahmalok. So of course there is going to be some trouble coming. So you have to look from that particular perspective, that such demigods, they create stumbling blocks in the path of a sannyasi, one who has taken to the renounced order of life. And a sannyasi in our parampara is called Tridandi sannyasi. his staff has 3 sticks, 3 bamboo sticks, and those 3 sticks represent mind, body and words. So all these 3 ways one can perform all activity should be engaged in pleasing Lord Rishikesha. So that is a vow that they have taken. And so such a, the demigods, when they are putting stumbling blocks in the path of a sannyasi, then they appear in the form of their wife, children and relatives, and attractive objects to the vision, to the sannyasi. But a sannyasi should not get bewildered by this and should not give any attention, no heed to the manifestations of the demigods. Now the interesting thing is, okay, this is the stage at sannyas level, that one has realized that Vasudeva Sarvam Iti Sa Mahatma Sudulabha. So again, such a personality is very rare. But in Vanaprastha, when one sees how will one pass the Vanaprastha state to give up this sense gratification, the engagement of fruitive activities and the tendency to gratify senses, what kind of austerities they have to perform, that has been described. First is we talked about, grown-up sons. In the care of grown-up sons, one has to leave his wife. Srila Prabhupada himself, he had grown-up sons, so he left his wife in the care of his grown-up sons, and then he took sannyas. And otherwise, he would have to take if he did not have any son. And just like in the case of Dhidraj, who took Gadhari with him. And he has to, when he goes to the forest, then he has to eat the roots of as food, and then the fruits and grains can be cooked on fire, and they can be chewed, and they can be grounded with stone or even by one's own teeth. And he has to, for garments, what does he wear? He has to wear the tree bark, grass, leaves or skin of a deer. And this is not he has to kill a deer, it's like a deer which has died in its due course of time. Then he has to skin that deer and wear that skin to cover himself. And austerities, various kind of austerities, which appear very unhygienic in today's society, like not cutting his hairs, letting them grow as matted locks. When we say Narad Muni, so Narad Muni, he has got blonde hair, but they are appearing as matted locks. Lord Shiva, he has got matted locks as well, right? And Lord Shiva is a grihastha. Yes, he is a great ascetic. He is Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu. So he is the topmost Vaishnava, Lord Shiva. And he lets his beard grow. So in the Vanaprastha state, one has to let his beard grow, his nail grow. So that is very unclean. Somebody would say, wait a minute, this is very confusing. That in Vanaprastha, as per the Vedas, you have to let your hair grow, you have to let your nails grow. Such an unclean state. One has to take bath 3 times daily. So, and be satisfied by sleeping on the ground. Those are other austerities that come in. Now, in the cold season, in the winter season, one has to stand in the water, covered up to the neck, when it's raining from top. First of all, it's cold, it's ice cold water, and you are in the water neck deep, and it's raining, so there is cold water also on your head. Such is the austerity for the body to sustain. Many people would just leave, with the thought of this, they may leave their body. And what's the situation, what kind of austerity to perform in summer? To stand under hot sun during the month of summer, and surrounded from all directions by fire. So again, basically the earth is hot like fire, so it's very hard to even stand on this earth. And then on top of that, the ground is like burning, and then you have fire burning on all around you, and then the sun is on top of you. So completely surrounded with fire. Such is the severe condition in Vanaprastha state. And after performing all these austerities in Vanaprastha state, what is the destination one attains? Somebody would ask, what will I attain? Will I be able to go back home, back to Godhead? No. Vedas clearly identified that you will be able to attain Tapoloka, which is also known as Mahaloka or Rishi Loka. So this is a place of great austerities where they are performing more austerities. Now, interestingly, when Lord Krishna is revealing this to Uddhav, in the very next verse, which is the 10th verse, he says that one who is seeking such sense gratification, right, to be able to, because even going to Mahaloka or Tapoloka, one is going there to perform for the austerities, he is looking for higher elevated planets. There is some sense of sense gratification involved. Then such sense gratification is what for the greatest fool. Because out there also performing of austerity will not lead him result. What will lead him result is that one has to develop devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Otherwise one will fall back to this earthly planet. So that's why Srila Prabhupada again identified that this is a rare opportunity. And he always identified to us that we should just simply take to the chanting of the holy name to perfect our life. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So in this Mahamantra, we see three words, Hare, Ram and Krishna. So Krishna refers to Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ram refers to Lord Krishna as well as Radharaman, or we can think of Balramji, or we can think of Ramchandraji. All are Vishnu Tattvas and they are not different. Hare refers to, again when Hara, right? Radharani's name is Hara. And with love, she is called Mother Hare. So Hare means one who steals away the heart of Lord Shri Krishna. Such a sweet, so when she can steal away the heart of Lord Shri Krishna, and she is our Supreme Mother, she is a loving Mother. If we pray to her, it's very easy to get mercy of Lord Shri Krishna. Right. So Lord Shri Krishna is also known as Madan Mohan, the one who can attract the Cupid. And Mother Radha is also known as Madan Mohan Mohini, who can enchant the enchanter of the Cupid. So such is the wonderful Mother that we have. So we are praying to Mother Hare to please engage us, and to Lord Shri Krishna, please engage us in your service. So Mother is very affectionate. She is very loving, and she allows us to have this mercy of Lord Shri Krishna, the causeless mercy of Lord Shri Krishna, so that we can attain that love of Godhead, the very goal of this life, during this life, which is very made easy by the simple process of devotional service. Yet at the same time, people who are still attracted towards Vanaprastha life, right, and want to follow Varṇāśrama dharma and so forth, and finally come to the age of sannyas. What is their destination? Now there are 4 stages in sannyas. Kutichaka, Bahudaka, Parivarajacharya and Paramhamsa. These are the 4 stages in sannyas order of life. So in Kutichaka stage, one can accept renounce order and stay outside his village in a cottage. So he's staying outside his village in a cottage, and his necessities, especially his foods, his clothes and other things, they are supplied from his home. So his family members and relatives can supply him, some things to sustain him. So in this way. So that is the Kutichaka stage. And yet at the same time, a sannyasi should not be keeping things for the next day. Even at the Vanaprastha stage, one should not be keeping it for the next day or next meal. They should take whatever is just sufficient, and then they should be satisfied with it. They should not overeat. They should, be very cautious in their practices. And when a sannyasi proceeds further, he starts going and begging for alms. This is also called Madhukari. Madhukari actually means the profession of a bumblebee. Now what does a bumblebee do? This is the black drone bumblebee, not the red and black jacket bees. So black drone bumblebee, all it does is it goes to different flowers and just takes enough to satisfy itself. It doesn't store like the honeybees that we know of. They create the honeycomb and so forth, and they keep it for the future. That is not what a bumblebee does. It just gets enough and then it's satisfied, never keeps anything for the future. So in this way, a sannyasi should take to Madhukari, going from house to house, and it is described as per the Shastras, should go to 7 houses and take little from each house, so that it does not cause any anxiety, any remorse feeling in any of those houses, and should just take very little just to satisfy. And Shukdev Goswami, he shows by his example that before meeting Parikshit Maharaj, he was coming and he would stand, he would go to a house just enough for them to milk a cow, so that they could offer a little pot of milk to Shukdev Goswami as alms. And he would just take that milk, and this was only to sanctify that household. So that is the purpose of a sage. Then he doesn't go to say, okay, give me. No, he goes to the various houses to sanctify those houses, to purify those houses, to preach them about Krishna consciousness, about the glories of Lord Shri Krishna, his name, form, activities, pastimes. So in this manner, he is going to different houses. And he should not be going to the same 7 houses. He should not be going to the houses again because he gets nice food stuff there. So again, he has to be very controlled, in his mannerism as well as in his behavior. So in this way, one can come to the level of Bahudaka. And after Bahudaka stages, one goes around the world, preaching all around the world. And he comes to the stage of what is he preaching? He is preaching the glories of Lord Vasudeva. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sa Mahatma Sudulabha. So in 11 years, Srila Prabhupada, he went around the globe 14 times preaching the glories of Lord Shri Krishna. And he opened more than 108 temples and so many centers where devotional service and congregation chanting was being performed. He comes to the stage of Parivarajak Charya, one who does not have a permanent home. Rather, he is an Acharya who is constantly preaching all around the world, traveling all around the world. And when a sannyasi reaches the stage of a Paramhamsa, so that's the next stage, then he finishes his preaching work and he basically sits down at one place. So he resides at one place. As Srila Prabhupada at the final stages of his life, he was in Vrindavan, constantly engaging in devotional service and continuing to do translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he's serious about at that Paramhamsa stage, which is above Hamsa. So Parivarajacharya stage is very, very close to the Hamsa stage, where one can clearly, for the people, for preaching purposes, clearly identify what is absolute truth and what is relative truth related to this material world. And so at the Paramhamsa stage, one is above the rules and regulations of the Varṇāśrama dharma, and one completely controls his senses and engages in devotional service. So you can imagine such difficulty is the process of Varṇāśrama dharma, which is like going through the steps to get to the 50th floor. While devotional service is so easy that one can enter the elevator just like and can reach the 50th floor just with the press of a button by taking to the chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And here, in this chapter, Lord Krishna actually ends with this note that ultimately one has to take to the chanting of the holy day, one has to take to the devotional service. And in the next chapter, he glorifies the devotional service, pure devotional service unto his lotus feet, by which one can attain true perfection in this very life. So even the Varṇāśrama dharma, all this process and all these activities are basically to dovetail one's understanding that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one should simply render loving devotional service to him with humility, with gratitude and tolerance, to be able to attain perfection in this very life, to attain the goal of this life, and remove all the causes of miseries and break away the cycle of birth and death. With this, we would like to end today's chapter. Thank you very much for joining us. Gantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. We will do little Harinam as part of the closure. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे, हरि हरि बोल। हरे कृष्णा।
Hare Krishna.